Shout out Ron Swanson. Where he takes a picture of Big Ben and he's like, oh, look, a clock. We don't have that in America. Joined by a very, very special guest tonight, Khari Thompson.
Khari, can you tell the folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am actually from Northwest Indiana / Chicagoland myself. Grew up there, went to school there, et cetera, et cetera. Came out to Boston for work. I'm actually a producer with WBUR in Boston, public radio, so not as much sports. But for the last couple of years, I was a sports reporter with Boston.com and the Boston Globe, and was just recently at WEEI covering the New England Patriots for that radio station. So yeah, so a little bit of institutional knowledge about the New England Patriots and how weird that whole operation was last year in particular, and maybe a little bit of how things could be different this year. So really happy to be joining y'all.
As you say that sparks some questions for me of like, man, I was reading up on the Patriots over the weekend and like what they were doing last year. And like, I mean, Bill O'Brien's a proven guy in this league, right? Like he proved it with the Patriots. I mean, he had Tom Brady's help, but what do you foresee happening with this offense schematically? Like what's the step they're going to take? What do you think, how big a difference you think that's going to make?
I mean, let's boil it down to the basics. The number one thing I expect is just pure competence, right? Everything you heard and read about the New England Patriots last year doesn't quite do it justice. I remember watching some of those practices offensively. They could not execute anything. They just couldn't run plays. I mean, they would try to run outside zone. You had guys just straight up not knowing who to block, play get blown. Like they couldn't run running plays. And then they would be like running gap run plays, like kind of the old school Patriots bread and butter. And you're like, oh, look at that. It's almost like they had to run those plays every once in a while just to remind the offense and the offensive line, like, oh yeah, you can actually run the football if you just do this thing. Now, okay, let's do this other stuff we're not as good at. But they couldn't run anything. The play action boots that they were trying to run off of those zone concepts, they didn't know how to block the play action. Mac Jones would be sitting back there. You had receivers running into each other on route combinations, like out of trips, where just like dudes just did not have a concept of spacing. And Mac Jones would be sitting back there in the pocket. People ragged on Mac Jones a lot. And I'm not going to sit up here and say that I think that Mac Jones is God's gift to quarterbacking, but I am also not going to sit up here and tell you the guy's trash. He showed as a rookie that he was advanced mentally for his age in terms of being in the league as a quarterback, and that he could just simply get the ball where it's supposed to go, that he could be accurate, that he can execute an offensive game plan. Whether or not he could do it at a spectacular level, I mean, obviously he hasn't shown that he can really do that yet. But last year was just completely unfair to Mac Jones in terms of the evaluation process. He was not running a real NFL offense. Like it's as simple as that. Okay. Right. I watched all of those games. That was not an NFL offensive system. So I think you have to look at this year and say, we're going to get back to some of the things that we did with Bill O'Brien in the beginning, some of the two tight end stuff, some of those heavy formations where you just get downhill, run the football, some of these old school Patriots things. You're also potentially going to see a little bit more RPO, some more empty sets, things that allow Mac Jones to take advantage of the thing that he does the best, which is process, think through things, eliminate problems before the play starts. I've seen the guy in practice clearly have an idea of what he wanted to do pre-snap. And the defense throws in like a, cover one robber at him. He expected to get, straight man across the board, and they throw, a wrinkle at him. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll just do this and I'll just throw it the other way. He is capable of making quick decisions on the fly. He has backup plans to backup plans. But when you don't give him a real plan, what is he supposed to do with that? But I think when you saw Mac Jones at his best last year, it was empty sets. He's hitting his back foot and the ball is out. It is gone. It is in his guys' hands. As soon as they turn around out of their break, there's no chance for a defender to get the ball. That's what Mac Jones, they need to get him back to doing. And get him some guys that are going to create yards after the catch, because that was lacking at points last year. That's how you generate explosive plays when you don't have a quarterback that's going to be chucking the ball, 20, 30 yards down the field regularly. The guy's not Josh Allen. That doesn't mean they can't get chunk plays through the air. So I think they just need to get back to kind of playing boring old Patriots football.
Yeah. So I was going to say,
go ahead, Jay.
One thing that is kind of getting slept on is the Bill O'Brien acquisition. So you look at Bill O'Brien's career as a coach in the NFL, and so just take away the Patriot days with Tom Brady. Mac Jones might be the best quarterback he's ever worked with if you look at his career in Houston. And you look at
you had Deshaun Watson. I mean, Deshaun Watson was
2 years of Deshaun. I forgot about. I was thinking he was maybe gone by then.
But I mean, like when you talk about the non-Deshaun Watson years, when he's working with like Brandon Whedon,
I was listening to Aaron Foster the other day,
like that. Yeah,
Aaron Foster listed off like 17 people that was his quarterback. But you look at those offenses that he had in Houston pre Deshaun Watson, they were always competent. Like they never had issues moving the ball. They were always solid teams. Now Bill O'Brien, the GM, is completely irrelevant because he's a coordinator here. But I think getting Bill O'Brien back in that Patriot system is kind of getting not like you're not really hearing about it. And he's a proven commodity in the league. And then Belichick's going to have that defense right, and it's like you look at this division as a whole, and there's talent everywhere. Miami might be the most talented team on paper in the NFL. The Bills are still the Bills. Josh Allen is closer to Dak Prescott than he is Patrick Mahomes, but we're not going to talk about that right now. And then you have Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, but at the same time, like New England could very sneakily just like be a very good, solid team, and then you look up halfway through the season. And 10 games in, like, oh shoot, like they're 6-4. Like, could they make a run at this? Like, I like where this team's at right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 of these teams make the playoffs. But I definitely wouldn't be surprised if somebody gets left out, and New England's one of 2 teams that get in with the other 3.
See, that's an interesting take. So I will point out there was a point last year where all 4 of the AFC East teams were in the playoff picture. And the Patriots, all they had to do was win one of those games they coughed up at the end there. The Raiders game with that horrible backward lateral sequence. And then even the next week, they were going to win that game. They were probably going to score a touchdown and win that game against the Bengals, even as horrible as their first half win. And then Ramondre Stevenson fumbles the ball on the 5-yard line. Exactly. There was no reason they weren't going to win that game. They would have made the playoffs. That would have been it. It's like as dysfunctional and ridiculous as so much of that was last year, that could have been a playoff team. They finished 8-9. And so you look at it and you could say, on paper, they're the fourth team in the division, right? On paper. But in practice,
they have Belichick.
And see that's the interesting thing, right? How many wins is Bill Belichick by himself worth? Because I think you could say that Bill Belichick offset some of the atrocity that was happening on offense just because the defense continued to be good and generally the team was competitive. But I feel like the way the Patriots approach things this year and not really going out and upgrading the offense to a tremendous degree in free agency, right? They let Jacoby Myers walk, signed Juju Smith-Schuster to a similar deal. But again, Juju Smith-Schuster is around the same age, but he has more yards after catch potential. You get Mike Gesicki in there, another big a red zone target, another guy who can kind of get in there and just catch the ball, move the sticks, and help a red zone offense that was the worst in football. I mean, they were just god awful every time they get inside the 20 because, again, they didn't have any variety to their offense. They were annoyingly predictable, and they would just shoot themselves in the foot execution-wise. Bill O'Brien was the big offseason acquisition this year. It was basically just like, you know what? Would it be great to have amazing talent offensively? Yeah. Do we necessarily need it to be a playoff team? No, not necessarily. They just need to be competent. Bill O'Brien brings that back to you. Now, I do think that in the end, the Bills right now, to me, still the class of the division. I find that comment that you made about Josh Allen being closer to Dak Prescott than Patrick Mahomes interesting because I think that, again, when you talk about physical talent, there's probably only one quarterback, and that being Patrick Mahomes, that has the level of raw talent that Josh Allen does.
that wasn't
Okay.
necessarily about talent. It's about production and what you see on the field. So you look at Josh Allen. I mean, has anybody made a career for themselves better than Josh Allen losing an overtime playoff game against Patrick Mahomes? I mean, he's still writing that like, oh, they would have gone to the Super Bowl. They would have done this. They would have done that. They didn't win the coin flip. That's the only reason why. But then every other time he makes the playoffs, like it's this or that. Or when it comes down to win a big game, when it's like, oh, we can get home field advantage, they don't get it done. I mean, they would be so good if they were good.
I think that Josh Allen to me is definitely a better player. And I think that he is in that realm of Patrick Mahomes is kind of in a tier of his own. And then Josh Allen is in whatever tiers like right underneath that. It's kind of
I would say he's closer to Dak Prescott than Joe Burrow then.
Okay. We're gonna have to come back and we're gonna have to do this another time. But okay. I think that the Bills still the best team in the division as long as that offense stays healthy and able to produce. The defense obviously lost a little bit. Tremaine Edmonds, their middle linebacker, goes to the Bears in free agency. But I think, and they just locked up Ed Oliver. They're still a good team. They are going to be a good team. Miami is so interesting to me because on paper they are ridiculous, particularly on offense. And they've made splash trades, right? We're going to go get Jalen Ramsey. We're going to sign Teron Armstead, go ahead and shore up the offensive line. They traded for Bradley Chubb last year. Their roster is stacked. But again, Tua Tagovailoa, what is the ceiling with him? And also, what is his health going to be like? How much can you trust that? I feel like I've got his
majorly on the backup quarterback though.
It's yes. I will say though that I think that you've got to stay, I don't know, cautious with the Dolphins because I think that there were times even last year before Tua, started to decline in terms of he declined with his play before he got knocked out, kind of for the rest of the year because I think teams started to realize, okay, this guy loves RPOs. He's not necessarily great at pushing the ball down the field. He's mainly good at it because he could throw the ball to Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill 5-10 yards down the field, and then they can take it the rest of the way. But then once teams started to kind of force Tua into what they wanted him to do, he started to struggle a little bit more. And then you started to see that offense slow down. So I would put them second in the division behind the Bills, just because I think the Bills have a better track record of success. But I would give them an opportunity for sure to win this division. I think they're up there. The Jets, look, on paper, I mean, that team had a playoff Super Bowl caliber-esque defense last year. And that was the first year of Sauce Gardner.
Garrett Wilson is an absolute freak.
And I love Garrett Wilson. But again, you're talking about Aaron Rodgers coming here and saying, well, they're Super Bowl contenders now. And I'm just like, I don't know that I'm willing to go there yet because I feel like I need to see Aaron Rodgers now mesh with an entirely new group of receivers, which that took a while last year with Green Bay, with the young guys that he had to come in. And again, they figured it out towards the end of the year. But I feel like we just think to ourselves, oh yeah, the Jets are just going to come in and light it up. I feel like to me, they're still the Jets until they prove differently.
Also, Aaron Rodgers.
I think the underrated aspect of that too is rookie center on a shaky O-line with Aaron Rodgers and all new receivers. Like, I think there's a lot of change there and a lot of inexperience along with it that can make the early going of the season tough and makes it hard for me to think they're winning the division. Yeah. Maybe make the playoffs, but the division becomes shaky.
I could see them being a wild card.
So now that we've kind of hit on all the teams, we brought you in to talk Patriots.
Yes, sir.
How do you think the Patriots line up here with their roster? Where are the strong points? Where are the weak points? Where can they excel? Where can they find wins? Pretty tough schedule. I mean, they play everybody in their division twice, obviously. Very tough division. Brutal schedule.
We're into Vegas, the hardest schedule in the NFL.
Yeah. So where do you find some opportunities here? I mean, just starting out.
It's interesting because when you talk about New Orleans, you're like, oh yeah, that's a pretty winnable game. I thought that a couple of years ago when New Orleans came to the Patriots in Week 3, and New Orleans just kind of blew the doors off a little bit. I mean, there were some mistakes in that game. That was kind of like the first rough Mac Jones game. He had 3 interceptions. Not all of them were his fault. One of them clanged off a wide open receiver's hands, just, and just shoveled it into somebody's hands for a pick 6. Like, okay, Mac Jones can't do anything about that. But I think that was a game where they looked kind of flat out coached and outplayed. And you're like, that was the sloppiest Patriots game I had seen until the Raiders game last year. and so I think that you can't necessarily just pencil that in. So when I think about the Patriots, the last couple of years, we've seen them start off like 1-3, or 2-4, things like that, where they start off slow and then they pick up wins when they start to get to the bad parts of the schedule. I think you can look at this and say, okay, you're looking at like Washington and Indy in there, and you're like, okay, yeah, they should be they should win those games, right?
Yeah.
And so you could start to see them pick up a little bit of momentum, win a couple of those games, right there in the middle of the schedule, and then kind of as you were hinting, right, then all of a sudden, oh, look at that, they're 6-4, they're in the playoff picture, and then it's all about the stretch run. Can they finish strong? That's been one of their weak points the last couple of seasons, is not being able to finish strong. And I look at them in an overarching way. The simplest way that I can put the Patriots is that they have beaten the teams they're supposed to beat, and they've lost to the teams that you would consider to be good/elite. And that's not a place that you want to be if you're a contending team, which is why I don't right now see the Patriots as a contender.
It's a tough draw getting the NFC West and the NFC East. Like,
so I do want to say, I don't know that Indy's a writing because of Anthony Richardson.
He's looking
This is a defense that really struggled with running quarterbacks last year.
Yes, and this goes back a couple of years, and people will tell you, oh yeah, it's been like that for the last decade or so. I mean, I tabulated this out at one point. The quarterbacks who did not finish in the top 5 in rushing over the last couple of years, like the non-Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson quarterbacks, like the Patriots held them to something like 12 fewer points per game, and we're something like 8-3 or something like that. I think that when it comes down to it, Bill Belichick, if you are a stand in the pocket passer, he generally knows what to do with you and how to game plan for you. Even Aaron Rodgers, which is a factor that I noted last year when the Patriots played Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers didn't have a great game at all against the Patriots. Tom Brady didn't have a great game when he came back in 2021 to play the Patriots at Gillette, right? So you see these quarterbacks, you don't necessarily see them get sliced and diced from the pocket from like these traditional passers, though I think Joe Burrow had one of the better performances against them. But when they got to face a Justin Fields or a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, who doesn't necessarily run the ball a lot in terms of read option, but when he scrambles and breaks the pocket and you can't tackle him, they cannot stand playing against those quarterbacks. They have a terrible time guarding against mobile quarterbacks. I think that when you look at, and the Anthony Richardson thing is interesting, because you could look at Justin Fields last year and say, well, that was the worst passing offense in the NFL for a variety of reasons. And be like, well, Justin Fields, a lot of people were saying, I'm not worried about that. Justin Fields can't pass. And I was like, I mean, if he gets loose and gets around in the secondary, that could be a problem for you. And lo and behold, that's what happened. Anthony Richardson could be a very similar thing. If you don't get the guy on the ground, that's a problem. And that has been a problem for the Patriots defense. Yeah. I think that when it comes down to it, they are going to be a team that maybe starts slow, picks it up because they're all about, oh yeah, like call me when it's November and then we'll talk and we'll see about what kind of team this is. But again, when it comes down to it, are they good enough to go? Are they good enough to be more than 500 in their division? I would say right now, I don't think I can say yes.
Yeah.
Now on the defensive front, looking at this roster, I couldn't help but just think of all the different ways you could deploy these guys. Like they are pushing towards positionless football in New England.
Yes, they are.
And how creative is Bill going to get with these guys? Because they just have so many hybrid guys who are kind of safety, kind of linebackers, kind of edges.
We've
they're
talking about
just everything
for the past 2 years about kind of the way of the NFL about after you hit your front 7, everybody after that can basically play anywhere in the defensive backfield. And we were talking about like those guys are going to be more and more highly sought after. I mean, getting Christian Gonzalez when they did, like, it's ridiculous how often
That's
like
insane.
a stud will fall to the Patriots. Washington football team takes the kid out of Mississippi State.
I couldn't believe that was
kidding
Forbes.
me? Like,
I couldn't believe it. And it's like I'm not saying that as somebody who dislikes Forbes. I could not believe.
I like Forbes at 26 for the Cowboys, but not where he went.
Yeah, and you know, I was a person who everybody was saying, well, the Patriots have to draft a corner. I was like, no, they don't. I mean, it would be beneficial, and that was an area that it wasn't necessarily a weakness for the Patriots last year, but there were times when their lack of size at corner and the fact that they were playing, you know, Jonathan Jones as a boundary corner as their best guy, and they were playing, you know, rookie Jack Jones and stuff like that. Yeah, like there were times when it hurt them, but by and large, it was not the weakness that I think people portrayed it as. But the fact that they didn't have a better than 6 foot corner out there that could actually play, yeah, it showed up every once in a while. Yeah. And so I said, I don't want to see the Patriots draft a corner just for the sake of drafting a corner. Like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and draft Joey Porter Jr. at number 15. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's not the number. That's not the number 14 overall pick to me. I don't want to do that. The fact that they were able to trade back and get Christian Gonzalez. The Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon were the only corners in the first round where the Patriots were at that I really wanted to see them go after and not like maybe go for a receiver or something like that. I think in our mock draft
we gave you Christian Witherspoon, so we barely missed that one.
Yeah, and so when they got Gonzalez, I could not believe it. You look at how smooth that guy is. Yeah, I mean, rookie cornerbacks, sometimes they get picked on, but I can just see that guy just flourishing under Belichick. But you talk about the positionless football. As unimaginative as the Patriots offense was last year and simplistic as that was, the Patriots defense was just so surprisingly competent for all the weaknesses that we thought that they were going to have, particularly in terms of not being the greatest front in the world. Like you had Matt Judon, you had Christian Barmore, and Judon again had an excellent year, but a lot of it was kind of
Dietrich Weiss is one of my favorite guys since you pointed him out to me. Like he's so fun.
And he's another one of those dudes that he plays inside. It's kind of like that quintessential inside outside sort of presence that they love, and they got another rookie that does something similar in Keon White, and I feel like that could absolutely be like Dietrich Wise 2.0, and so that's kind of how I look at that. The linebackers we thought were going to be problematic, they actually weren't, which I found really interesting.
They always get good linebacker play, I feel like.
They do, and I mean that's what Gerard Mayo's there for. That guy is going to be a head coach sometime, but the safeties in particular is my favorite group on this team. It has been for the last couple of years. They're missing Devin McCourty, but Jalen Mills is going to be able to kind of fill in a little bit of that hybrid floating DB role. Adrian Phillips and Kyle Duggar are two of the just most solid safeties out there. Kyle Duggar can do a little bit of everything. Adrian Phillips can do a little bit of everything at such a high level. I would say if I were going to pick one that was going to be more of the deep safety guy, I would probably pick that to be Adrian Phillips, though Kyle Duggar, I think, plays best with the football in front of him and has great range. But then you add the guy, Marte Mapu, their third round pick, whom a lot of people are like, what? Who's that? Well, that's another hybrid safety linebacker whom, from everything that I've been hearing, has been everywhere. The guy he can't even fully participate in OTAs. He's got the red non-contact jersey, and they're still clearly showing they want him all over the place with that kind of versatility. That's going to be the way that the Patriots defense messes with you, by making sure that you have no idea where they're going to line up. You have no idea what their responsibilities are, and they're still going to play a ton of man coverage whenever they can. And then the rest of it is you don't know where the pressure's coming from.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of talked ups and downs of the New England Patriots, talked a little bit about the division overall, talked about the schedule. We do a little gambling on this podcast, but we'll talk over-under wins. Vegas has it at 7.5, and we looked at that schedule. It's brutal. First, where is the make or break point in this schedule? Like I named those first 4 games you have, If you start out 1-3, are you worried?
No, I'm not hitting the panic button because again, I've seen it the last couple of years. They have been able to survive. I will say the make or break point in the schedule comes directly after the bye. I mean, because think about it, right? So they might start off 1-3 here, and then maybe pick up some wins against New Orleans and against the Raiders, and then you're probably losing to Buffalo. You're probably losing to Miami. I mean, so I could definitely see them.
So I mean,
yeah. I mean, it hasn't mattered the last couple of years. They haven't beaten Buffalo since they beat Buffalo in 2021 in the Blizzard game in Orchard Park, but they haven't actually beaten
7 attempted forward passes or something like that.
Yeah, it was not, that wasn't like real football. In any kind of regular football game, the Patriots haven't beaten the Bills since 2019. But to get back to the question, right? So, I mean, yeah, they could be hovering around 500 or a little bit under going into the bye. If you beat the Giants, I think that with the Chargers are on paper a better team, but they've handled Justin Herbert. They've handled Justin Herbert very well the couple of times that they've played the Chargers since Herbert's come into the league. So I could definitely see
that. Kind of hits to what you said about pocket passes. I feel like as athletic as Herbert is, he's not as creative as some other guys who are athletes at the position. He likes to play more on time and doing what he's supposed to do, which plays into Belichick more.
It always does.
Another guy probably got crowned a little too early, but
I mean, I think that I feel like he's that dude. I feel like he has been miscast a little bit in that offense there. I do think though that it's like he's not necessarily Jesus in cleats, but he has wild talent, and I think that if you allow him to, I mean, have average yards per attempt, like air yards per attempt more than like 5, then maybe you'll get more than out of Justin Herbert. But I think
they love Mike Williams so much they drafted his clone. So what's better than one Mike Williams? 2 Mike Williams. Push the ball downfield.
One of them is down there somewhere. Chuck it. But I think like you if you come out of the bye and you can beat the Giants and then you can beat the Chargers, you get Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, and they won in Pittsburgh just this last year with absolute dysfunction.
Pittsburgh doesn't really. I mean, Mike Tomlin's outside of Belichick, arguably the best coach in the league, I would say. So I mean, it's always going to be tough, but
you got
not a whole lot about that. That team really scares me.
You got Mitch Trubisky paired with Allen Robinson again. Like, it's going to be awesome.
Well, I mean, Kenny Pickett, but I think again, right? Like that's not scaring me, right? Like playing Kenny Pickett,
that wouldn't scare me either. It's just
that doesn't.
It's also when you're not scared of Pittsburgh is when they go do Pittsburgh things too.
Exactly. But I think that if you can pick up 2 out of 3 right out of the bye, you are right there in the mix.
Denver's winnable.
Denver's winnable, and then honestly,
games.
Denver's a winnable game, and then I feel like they're going to get one against the Jets. One way they are going to get at least one against the Jets.
It's the Jets
because
the Jets, Patriots.
They're the Jets, and Bill Belichick hates the Jets with such an unbelievable passion that he is going to find a way to scheme some wins against the Jets. So I think that if they can just stay above water going into the bye or tread water, right? Then you come out and you win 2 of those 3 games. That tells me that they have an actual opportunity to make the playoffs. They go 1 of 3 coming out of the bye. I think you kiss it goodbye at that point.
Yeah. So 7.5 wins or 7.5 win total. You like the over, or if you had to bet it? I don't know if you're a betting man or not, but if you had to pick, you going over or under 7.5?
I will take the over. I'm not even saying it's a whole lot over, but I'll take the over because look, I've seen the New England. I've seen the New England Patriots win 7 games with Cam Newton and a roster that was like the lowest spending in the league. Like they had guys you hadn't even heard of. They were out there throwing a Demir Bird, and they had like Anthony Jennings as like a starting linebacker out there. Like they had no talent. They were completely talent devoid, and they went 7-9 in 2020. And then I just watched them with an offense that was completely incapable of functioning at an NFL level, go out and win 8 games. So yes, I can absolutely understand anybody that looks at this and says, dude, they're the 4th team in the division. There's no way that they can, they're going to tank, right? They're going to like be in the running for a top 10 pick. And I'm still going to point at you and be like, when has Bill Belichick fielded a truly, truly, truly awful football team? Their floor to me is 7 wins. I'm not going to sit there and say their ceiling is 12 because I don't think so. They are probably in the 7 to 10 range on the high side.
7 to 9 is what I felt.
10 if you get lucky. But I think that this is most likely, when it's all said and done, going to somehow end up being an 8 or 9 win team because they just always do somehow.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this much. I'll be cheering hard for you week 1.
All right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I got one more question for you.
Let's do it
on the offense here. So like I look at the offensive roster and I see a lot of wide receivers who I don't know where they're going to slot in on the depth chart. And I see 2 tight ends that make me feel like, man, that they're trying to recreate Gronk Hernandez again. But is this going to be the watered down version that works, or is it going to be like stuck in the middle? How do you see that all playing out within the offense between like Thornton and Bourne, and maybe Booty gets in there? And how are Gesicki and Henry going to play into that? Are they going to be larger roles or what?
So this is where it gets interesting because I feel like Devontae Parker is kind of your clear X receiver type of guy. I think Tyquan Thornton is the key to this operation because he, at least in training camp, before he got hurt, because he had a collarbone injury and he ended up on IR and came back mid-season, and then he comes out and scores 2 touchdowns in his first game, and then the Patriots kind of just forgot how to use him. I feel like I look at what Bill O'Brien did with Will Fuller when Will Fuller came into the league in 2016 and basically just turned the dude into a touchdown machine right off the bat when the dude could stay on the field. And I think that's what they want for Tyquan Thornton. And I think that, people look at him and just say, wow, he is rail thin. He's just a fast guy that runs downfield. That's probably all he can do. I've absolutely seen glimpses of Tyquan being able to do more than that. He is tough. I think that he's got better feet and a little bit better wiggle and ability to sell routes than I think he gets credit for. Still got to work on some of the technical aspects of things, how to throttle down, slow down, be available to your quarterback. But I'm excited to see what ends up happening with him. And then Juju is going to be, to me, your kind of power slot, your big slot guy, along with Gesicki. See, that's the thing. This is not going to be exactly like the 2 tight end system of yore, because neither Hunter Henry nor Mike Gesicki is a true tight end in that way. Like, yeah, Hunter Henry can play wide tight end, but he is best suited to be a move guy, a guy who splits out at wide receiver. He's not a great blocker. You don't necessarily want him in that position, and you don't necessarily want Mike Gesicki doing that either. So this is going to be a lot of mixing and matching and just trying to create matchups to where I think Hunter Henry is the guy who's going to play more out of the 2. But Gesicki is going to be much more of a receiver than they are going to be like, okay, you be the Y, you be the move guy, and we're going to go ahead and go with that. They're going to play around with a lot of different matchups here. I think that when it comes down to the offense, the more important part of this, and you mentioned Booty. I guess let me go ahead and get to him really quickly because people are really excited about Kayshawn and about Demario Douglas, the 2 6th-round receivers. Don't expect too much of 6th-round receivers. There's a good chance that one of them most likely doesn't even make the roster because they're not going to keep like 7 receivers, most likely, right? And then one of them's going to be on the practice squad and you try to move them along. But they do bring elements that the offense doesn't have. So we'll see how they do in training camp. I think in the end, this is still going to come down to Ramondre Stevenson. He's your best offensive player right now. He just is. And making sure that you can open up holes for him so he's not getting hit in the backfield or doesn't have to just like pull yards completely out of his butt, like at the line of scrimmage where he's just like cutting and slaloming through like 4 dudes within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage and then magically pops out a 30-yard gain. If you can not have that and you could just have him just being able to impose his will because he's such a physical runner while also having a backup running back that can actually spell him right? So, Ty Montgomery potentially being healthy. He was looking like he was on track to be the new James White before he got hurt, right? And then James Robinson, if James Robinson can do anything of use. I think the running game is going to...
How old is Montgomery now? Do you know?
I think Montgomery is like 27, 28 years old. So he's still under 30.
He must have came in the league young then.
Yeah, so I think
running back years are like a mystery to me. Every time I think of a running back, I'm like, oh, he's 33, and they're like, nah, he's 26. I'm like, how?
No, exactly, because it seems like they've been there forever. And the thing is, like, Ty Montgomery has played so many different roles, and it's kind of been, I don't know, a wide receiver, running back, and has had times where he's been more useful than others. So he still got some tread on the tires, I would say. And he definitely looked like he had some juice last year before he got hurt. But I think it's really going to come down to the running game, and that is going to be what establishes the rest. I mean, that's kind of like, that's old school and arcane, but that's kind of how they like it. Play action passing from under center, which, by God, can they please do better with that last year? Because Mac Jones can actually execute that, and they didn't do nearly enough of it last year. And then, honestly, play around with the different matchups with your wide receivers, though I think if I had to pick two guys that are going to be the most important to this operation, it's going to be Tyquan Thornton and Juju Smith-Schuster, because they're going to be the ones that threaten defenses in terms of yards after the catch and getting loose and taking things to distance.
And
you got anything else?
One more.
Also, I was wrong.
Yeah,
Ty Montgomery's 30. Look at that.
Yeah. Listen, he's got to be 30.
I just felt like he'd been around a while. Like, I remember that year where he was with the Packers against the Bears. He made his debut at running back,
like in his first game.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
It was awful. But one last thing I wanted to mention. This one comes with a shout out to a guy that you actually mentioned to follow. It was Taylor Kyles.
Oh, that's the dude.
T Kyles 39 on Twitter.
Yes.
Wrote some awesome articles I used preparing for the show today. Only one team from 2017 to 2020 used empty sets more than the Texans. So that's the Bill O'Brien Texans.
Yes, indeed.
And you mentioned empty sets. It all tracks right there. Mac Jones used empty sets at one of the highest rates in college when he was at Alabama.
And RPO.
But since entering the NFL, they've barely used him in New England.
And
so,
yeah, and I think they've tried to make him, a Patriots quarterback of your, like, try to protect him in certain ways. Like, don't put too much on his plate. Mac Jones likes more on his plate mentally. He likes a challenge. That's kind of, I think, the way he operates best, as long as you're not asking him to operate in a system where it's like, okay, everybody knows this is 989 and there's no creativity about it. The guys aren't open. They're not running the right routes. What am I supposed to do with this? No, I think if you ask him to diagnose things and ask him to make the right decision, more often than not, he's going to do that. And then I mentioned the RPO part of this. He ran RPOs at a crazy rate in college when he was at Alabama. Again, that speaks to think quickly, trust what you see. Guy crashes, throw the ball. And he was good at that. So I think that you're going to see a little bit more of that from Bill O'Brien, because he's going to look at Mac Jones and just be like, okay, this is what the guy's good at. And I feel like the Patriots for a little while now have not necessarily had to reckon with that, because they had Tom Brady, and Tom Brady was just going to do whatever the hell he felt like doing. He was going to change a play. He like co-ran the offense with Josh McDaniels or whoever else was the offensive coordinator at the time, because he was that dude. But now you have to talk about how to actually develop a quarterback now, how to actually figure out what he does well and how to build around that. And I feel like Bill O'Brien is probably the perfect mixture of what the Patriots have done well, what they've liked to do for all these years, and also having institutional knowledge of the things that Mac Jones, as an individual quarterback, actually does well, and being able to merge those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like it. That makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you for joining us, Khari. Thank you for sharing your Patriots knowledge with us. And why don't you tell anyone who's listening where they can find you one more time?
Absolutely. You can find me at KD Thompson 5. Do a lot of public media related things these days, but I still tweet a lot about football and about sports generally. And since you brought up our man, Mr. Taylor Kyles, let me go ahead and mention right now, let me tease a little something that Mr. Kyles and I are going to be doing a little bit of something together, Patriots related, here soon. we will let you know. We will announce, but it's going to be awesome. So feel free to keep an eye on Taylor Kyles, keep an eye on me, and you'll see when we get our Patriots stuff going. It's going to be fun.
Heck yeah, man.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, Khari. You have a good one, and look forward to seeing what you got for us in the future.
Gentlemen, have a great one.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.